is the 117 Podcast with your host, Rafael Hernandez.
Welcome, my friends. After a long 2-week break, we are back with the podcast. Honestly, this international break really felt like we went a whole press season, a whole 2 to 3 months without football. At least that's how it felt for me. And honestly, I'm glad football is back because we really need it. And at last, I have bought a new microphone. For those that complained about the audio quality, I want to thank everyone because this is really important. You are listening to me, and if you can listen to me well, why am I even speaking, right? I think it's the most important part of getting close to everyone is basically speaking. So, especially in a podcast, of course. So now I'm back. The microphone is absolutely outstanding. If anyone is interested, I can recommend the microphone to everyone. And I'm just glad football is back, honestly. I'm kind of venting here because it's exactly how I feel. So I want to thank everyone again for the support on social media, for asking where was the podcast. Honestly, in the past 2 weeks, we had some stuff to talk about, absolutely, but nothing that was as pressing as the subject that we're going to be discussing today. So if you like the podcast, please consider supporting the show and me on Patreon. I have 2 tiers there. You can support me with $2 or $5. This makes all of the difference for a better podcast. If you support me there, I will follow you on social media. You can message me anytime. You are going to have early access to all podcasts and even a say on the subjects that I talk about here. When I get to around 10 to 15 patrons, I'm going to open a WhatsApp chat too for us to talk every day about football and other stuff. I'm really looking forward to this. So today I am here with FCB historian again to talk about the Goldman Sachs loan and what it means for Barcelona.
Thanks, Rafa. It's great to be here once again. So I look forward to our discussion. It should be an interesting one. So let's get started.
Yeah, so as you all know, the Goldman Sachs rumors of taking over Barcelona of a sort or have come to the light again for the past 2 weeks, and it's really legit. It's really happening. Bartomeu and this Barcelona board have, in some way that we are yet to understand very well, taken a massive loan from Goldman Sachs, which we don't know the exact details aside from what the board has said. It's going to be a loan of over 800 million euros. It's an absolute fortune if you consider that we have debt that exceeds over 800 million right now too. So you have the situation where Barca at the end of the stadium reform and everything could have a debt of over 1.5 billion euros. So yeah, this is as ridiculous for me saying as it is to everyone listening. So first of all, I want to explain how things have gotten to this point. As I'm sure everyone knows, the financial management by Bartomeu since he was elected president has been absolutely catastrophic. You have the situation of players like Sergio Roberto are earning right now over 9 million per year. So you have the situation where players that wouldn't be good enough for mid-table clubs in the Premier League are getting a lot more money than the top right back performance in the world. So you have a Trent Alexander-Arnold right now earns 2 million per year. You have Kimmich with a little over 4.5 million euros per year. This is all after tax. So it's absolutely crazy numbers, and Sergio Roberto is just one example. I don't want to be singling him out as some people thought I would do. You have the case of Umtiti. Some say that his salary is 9 million per year, but it's actually 12 million per year. And you had the case of Rakitic too, receiving a massive salary. You have Griezmann, who received in his first year at Barcelona 18 million euros. Now he has a progressive wage bump on his contract. So this season he's earning 20 million, and the next one he's going to be earning 22 million, and then he's going to earn 25. So yeah, this kind of management has really put a hole on Barcelona's finances, and this is where we get to the Goldman Sachs. As you all recall, we had last summer in the Griezmann signing that Barcelona took a loan from a bank. We aren't sure which bank they took a loan. We just knew that it was an American bank, and now we know that it was Goldman Sachs. So the board might have tried to cover this up, but they failed, because we now know that over 100 million of this loan has already been used to pay the players' wages. So imagine the hole that we have right now. But the focus of the podcast today is talking about Goldman Sachs as a threat to Barcelona, because normally this bank does not work simply to lending money to others, but they actually make entire operations in companies to later resell the shares that they bought. So they're not going to resell any shares that they bought from Barcelona, because Barca has no shares. So you have a very tricky situation, a very risky, a very dangerous situation, because we have seen since José took over Barcelona as president in 2010 that they had rumored to have an intentions to make Barcelona go private and wrestle the club away from the members. And when you start to see stuff like Qatar's involvement in Barcelona that failed, and now Goldman Sachs, we have a big problem. So what's next? We don't know, and this gets me very worried.
Yeah, I think what you've mentioned just now is really a serious issue when you think about the business model that is shifting away from member ownership, or let's say from the outset, really from a club that is owned by members or funded by members to more of a private asset. So now I think after the failed Qatar experiment, now we're seeing the move in that sort of direction, with a more kind of reputable bank injecting money into the club. And you've mentioned really briefly at the beginning how players have been put on insane wages, but I think this speaks of a broader issue with regards to the club's prestige as well. When we go into negotiations now, we're no longer utilizing that soft power to bring to lure players in. Rather, we're just really basically going ahead and offering obscene amounts of money just to attract players. And really, this is really sums up really well how the board is sort of approaches and deals with sporting issues. They always think of short-term solutions as opposed to kind of long-term solutions. They're willing to throw money at the problem, and in this case, basically just borrow money that they may not be able to pay back, and just throw it at the problem. So that's really an issue in the long term.
Yes, exactly. And we are not saying that Barcelona are going to be bought by an American bank. It's nothing of the sort. But the problem is this approach, by relying on banks and other outsiders to actually be financially sustainable, is a dangerous strategy, because as we have seen with the pandemic, we might see another pandemic happen in the future. We might see another kind of disaster, economical disaster, causing the world to go in turmoil. We haven't had a big financial crisis since 2008. Some people say that we might be close to a new crisis in the next few years. We all know the case of the United States. They keep printing money, and this might not be unsustainable, but this is not going to be a finance class. What we are saying is we have this issue with Barcelona, where taking a 800 million loan from another bank you have the situation as follows. Let's say that Barcelona does the entire stadium's reform, and then they start to pay Goldman Sachs back in 20 to 25 years, which I think is the board's idea. So, okay, we are going to have that money in the long term, absolutely, because Barcelona are not going anywhere, they're not going to disappear, right? Yes, but at the same time, we have many threats looming. We already have the coronavirus crisis. And although that we have some possibility of a vaccine coming for the coronavirus in the coming months, we don't know how long this is going to take. We might have the situation where Barcelona goes the entire year of 2021 without fans. We already see Barca as a club, the board pressuring the Spanish government to allow people in the stadiums, but they keep denying it. And a lot of the revenue that Barcelona earns, it doesn't come from from filling the stadiums, but it's a very relevant and big part. It exceeds over 50 million. So it's not that simple. We might see the clubs going into crisis. We've had people saying for over 20 years that the football bubble is going to burst someday. So you have so many possibilities that taking a risk over 10 to 20 years, it's really dangerous, because if you had told anyone back in 2019 that we were going to have a pandemic that would stop the world and really damage our lives and our football clubs, I would say that many people would be not only shocked, but in absolute disbelief. So we never know what's going to happen in the next month. So taking a loan over such a long time just puts the club in such a precarious position, because anything could happen, and we might have the case of a European Super League in the future. Spain is not a financially healthy country in the long run. They have big unemployment rates. So when you take all of this into consideration, it's very irresponsible to take a risk like this. And most importantly, we have the situation of the board taking this loan without asking the members. They are obligated to ask the members to vote it on assembly, and they didn't do it. So we don't know how did they pull this off. And it gets to a point that I have talked about many times before, the possibility that we have only seen the tip of the iceberg. If a true Barcelona fan takes over as president next year, or maybe this year, with the vote of no confidence, he might find a lot of things a lot worse than the financial problems that we are faced right now.
The result against Bayern did not just happen by accident. It's mainly the failure of the club on the sporting front, on the financial front, and this promise, the unfulfilled promise of a revolution that never came. And mainly that's mainly because we didn't have the financial means to pull it off. So that's the main issue there. We lack the financial means. So the club is at a point where it needs to kind of renew its football team, which brings in the most revenue. Now, when you look at that issue, and now with Messi aging and with the core players aging, we're still unable to reinforce the team properly. And I mean properly. I'm not saying that we, just go for the sort of like, let's go for the available players or like low tier players. No, I'm talking about properly reinforcing the club. And now, when you think about this situation with the pandemic and with the travel restrictions, fans are unable to fly into Barcelona. And that's and also obviously they have no reason to, because they're unable to attend games at the stadium. So this is a really sticky situation, and even if the board ends up getting voted out of the club, whoever's going to take over, they're going to be in a position that no one would want to even envy them, let alone be in their position. Because now to be a Barcelona president is really the worst job, the worst top tier job there is, I guess.
Yes, I think that few would doubt what you said, because the next Barcelona president, if he has honest intentions, if he has good intentions for the long term, health of the club, he's going to be in real trouble, because if the club is really making over $1 billion in revenue each year, we don't know if that's accurate too. I know that many big companies overlook the financial data that Barcelona puts out, but I wouldn't trust even that it's that grave. And I recall that, I would say 6 to 7 years ago, when the stadium reforms started to take form, that's when I got really scared, and I was even pessimistic about this. People were calling me out, okay, Rafa, you're being too pessimistic about the stadium. It's going to be good for us, new Camp Nou and everything. And what I always used to tell them, and I tell them now too, you have the situation of the Camp Nou. When the Camp Nou was built in 1957, it actually crippled the club financially for over a decade. And many people seem to, I wouldn't say forgotten this, because it was a long time ago, but overlooked this, because the management at the time, it wasn't half as bad as it is right now. And you have the real danger of committing to a stadium reform where the club wouldn't be in a strong position to take this loan from Goldman Sachs and everything. So the club would commit to a reform without having the actual funds from it, as we already seen from a loan. But more than that, it's a risk of mortgaging the club's future in the long term. We could have the situation, and I think that a good parallel to be drawn is Arsenal, because Arsenal just had to stop for a few years and just hold on after the Emirates was built. So Wenger was chastised by everyone for not spending and everything, but it was a matter of being sustainable. And of course, there's a lot more money in the game than it was the case in 2006. Absolutely, but the amount of money required for stadium reforms has actually been massively grown. So you have the situation with the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. They were supposed to spend something like 600 or 700 million pounds, and they ended up spending over $1 billion. So yeah, a lot of loans, and Levy is a very different management. His ability at managing a club is much. It's 100 times better than Bartomeu. So Tottenham are taking a different kind of risk, because they have built themselves from the ground up since they were bought by a new owner, by, I think it was Joe Lewis. Sorry if I'm mistaken. So you have the situation where Barcelona are not in a very good position to take a risk like this, and the board are making Barcelona take this risk without any regards for the long term of the club, which we have already seen them doing for a few years already. So lots of stupidly high wages, lots of stupidly high expensive signings that don't work. We have the Griezmann case blowing up for the past 3 weeks, where he basically criticized Koeman for not playing him in his best position, and you had the champs from the France national team giving Koeman a nod too. And now we have that strong reply by Koeman. So the big point is, this is not on Koeman, this is not on Griezmann, this is on the people that had absolutely no planning, and they brought him anyway. So all of this is really worrying, because we don't have enough details. We had Sidia, who was one of the people responsible for Barcelona's finances under the Laporta regime, coming out this week and saying that Barcelona is in a lot more financial trouble than we think. And she said many revealing things that should get anyone worried. So basically, the Spy Barca, which is the stadium reform, the loans have to be taken. They already have, in a way. So the loan to build the stadium is already being taken to pay the wages, though. So the loan is already being misused. So what has happened? You have the situation where the Goldman Sachs might be prioritized over the players, because we have had Bartomeu willing to negotiate with the footballers, the first team and the B team, about slashing their wages by 30%, and of course the players are refusing. But basically, we Bartomeu wants to pay the players less, but they have to keep paying Goldman Sachs whatever they have agreed with the bank. So a financial institution, and one of the biggest in the world, that is Goldman Sachs, could really put Barcelona in a tight spot financially. We don't know what could happen, because Barcelona right now are a society, so that it's owned for by the members. So it's very muddy waters here, and I'm not saying it's going to get to this point, but we have the Milan example. Lots of people like to say that Barcelona might become the next Milan, over 10 years in the shadows, really underperforming and out of the radar. But you had the Elliott Fund, Elliott Management Fund, taking over Milan. They are the Milan owners right now. So the possibility that Goldman Sachs could try to, at least, I wouldn't say take over Barcelona, but actually bind Barcelona in some way and make them Barca do a few things that normally they wouldn't do, it's a possibility. And that really worries me, because that's the moment where the members don't have control over the club right now. But a more pessimistic view would say that we already the members already don't have any control over the club anymore, because Bartomeu already do whatever he wants, and we know that he is trying his best to stop the vote of no confidence too.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. Basically, one issue that really remains consistent throughout this whole episode is the lack of transparency. So if you take out a massive loan and you use it for short-term gains, which is to pay the players basically to sustain whatever sporting project you have, this is deception outright. And the members are being gaslighted into accepting that as a sort of trade-off because of the whole financial situation surrounding the pandemic and all that. So it's easy to kind of sell that. Whether the club is going to transform at the end of the day, whether it's going to be sold off, there's a real possibility. I mean, honestly, as you pointed out, nobody expected a pandemic to kind of cripple the world like it did. But with Barcelona being sold off, hey, it could happen. If the regime, and I'm not talking about Bartomeu per se, I'm talking about this evil that keeps reincarnating over and over again. If these sort of big executives like Bartomeu, business owners, take over Barca, then they would do whatever whatever's or whatever makes sense from a financial point of view, from a purely financial point of view, and not sort of the decision that sort of takes the members into account, or respects the democratic heritage of the club. So Barcelona would end up becoming just another top tier club, sadly. So it's going to be in the hands of a foreign entity, and even if that didn't occur officially, don't expect Goldman Sachs or any sort of foreign investor not to have some degree of leverage over the decision makers of the club. And this is where this whole situation becomes extremely dangerous for the future of the club. Because at the time where we're trying to restore the Barca model, people want to turn the clock back and go back to the Qatar era.
Yes, and as you said, if a bank like Goldman Sachs has leverage over Barcelona, let's say that a good president comes over and he's elected, like someone like Laporta or Victor Font come in, and they want to bring Mbappe. We had some rumors about this. I'm going to talk about this in a later date. But let's say that we want to bring Haaland, for his clause becomes active for 75 million euros I don't know if it's next year or 2022. I think it's 2022. So the club is willing to pay the clause, but then we are faced with a strange possibility that Goldman Sachs might say, "Okay, you can't spend this money because you have to pay us, and making an investment like this could put us." Would put the bank to be paid over in the long term in difficulties. It adds more questions, and you have a problem. Not that Goldman Sachs is going to directly say, Barca, you can't sign Haaland, but they could say that it's okay. Hey Laporta, so you're going to do this, but be careful there because you could have it could get in the way. So basically, the next president would just have another big headache to deal with, and it's all about politics and pressure from outside too. It's all very difficult, and I think that everyone has noticed this by now. We don't have enough details yet. We have speculation, we have reports from the media, but we don't have full transparency from the board. And that's why most of this episode was all about speculating what's going to happen with Barcelona and Goldman Sachs rather than speaking facts. Because unfortunately, with Bartomeu in charge, we are in the dark and there's not much else that we can do. It's a bit frustrating, but it's actually sad. And you have the mess with the vote of no confidence because it was a massive success. You had over 90,000 votes against Bartomeu, and then we had Bartomeu trying to involve the Catalan police in the vote of no confidence, arguing that there were 5 signatures that could been faked. So basically, the police could have come in and derailed the entire vote of no confidence by establishing an investigation. And now we have reliable claims that Bartomeu is using lawyers from outside to stop the vote of no confidence going ahead at the beginning of November. So it's all very, very dodgy and very dangerous for the club's future because these people don't want to leave the club. They're fighting tooth and nail to stay in. And what becomes even more worrying is the fact that if they are removed by the vote of no confidence right now, the board aren't liable to pay for the debt that they caused the club. The debt would come in at the end of their term. So their term, it's going to be suspended. So why they don't want to dodge that bullet by simply getting voted out in the vote of no confidence, we don't know. There could be many possibilities, many warning ones, but one thing that I know, which is absolutely inevitable, if a good intention president that takes over, maybe at the end of this year or in March next year, he is going to have to sue the previous board because for the financial damages, and maybe that's where they are scared. They're trying to plug the holes before the ship fully sinks, but what they don't understand that they're going to be pushed out of the boat into the sea before they can actually try to plug the holes. Yeah, it's a very tricky situation. So it's already 30 minutes. I want to keep the podcast on up to 30 minutes to not saturate anyone. And I have made polls on social media asking for podcast length, and most people said that this would be an ideal time. And I'm with you. I completely agree. I want to thank FCB's historian for being here again. Always great to have your insight.
You're most welcome, bro.
Okay, guys. So see you on social media. You know where I am. You can find me easily. And please considering supporting me on Patreon. It's really important. I had to buy this mic out of my own money. It's not a problem, but if I don't make the podcast sustainable in the long term, it could get more trickier. And I want to do many podcasts. I want to do many rants on YouTube. So please considering giving me a hand. $2 per person would already be a massive help. I don't underestimate it. Take care and see you soon. Bye bye.
This was the 117 Podcast.